Well, I feel like I've been shooting a shotgun at you with so many different things. And as I say, it's taken me years and years and years to work at these things. And you know what? The way they come up, the attachments that prevent me from being free, from really being able to freely respond to the Lord's call. The need to have things, the need to have money, or the need to control my life or control other people's lives. It always comes up through suffering. When I get angry, when I get fearful, when I get anxious, when I get annoyed, are the best times. You know, when people pay you compliments and you're getting along well, that's nice, enjoy it. But your teachers are not those times. Your teachers are the times when the bad stuff happens. That's when you discover what's wrong with you. Again, the reign of God is within you. That's where you respond. That's where you say yes to God's will. And that's where the reign of God happens. God is now reigning in your life because you're saying yes to Him in your heart. And it's inside of you. Your anger is inside of you, your annoyance, your frustration, all that is yours. It's not out there. How many times have you seen some people get furious about something that somebody else takes in stride? I have seen, one time I was in a parish, and the pastor was an old Irish guy, big guy, wonderful sense of temper. The entrance to the church was a big square that was tiled, and you go up some steps into the school, or you go the opposite direction through the closed doors into the church. And after this one mass, I was standing there talking to this lady. She's about 5'1", mother of 15. And the pastor had gone into, there's a boys' bathroom and a girls' bathroom at the top of those stairs going into the school. And he came out of the girls' bathroom, and he was furious. He was in a rage. And he came down and we said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Some fool put a broken part of a inner part of a thermos bottle in one of the toilets, and the toilet's overflowed." And he was fit to be tied. The water was flowing all over the place, you know. And the little lady says, "I don't know why that bothers you. It happens every day in our house." Which means the thing out there is not what is annoying. It's the way we look at it. The thing out there, the person's behavior out there, the circumstances out there are just what they are. They're just what they are. And if we find them annoying or joyful or funny or anxiety-producing, that's all in us. It's all in the way we look at it. What? It's all in the way we look at it. And taking responsibility for our own pain, our own anger, our own resentment, our own bitterness, taking responsibility for it and not blaming somebody else, is learning how to get in touch with the kingdom. You get in touch with the kingdom when you accept responsibility for you, your attitudes, your feelings, your way of living. One of the things that gets in the road of that is the freedom to run your own life, to choose to follow the Lord, to choose to be open to all that He's doing. One thing that we talked about this morning are all the attachments. I need to have money. I need to have things. I need to be right. I need to do what I've always done. I need to be, always have things the way they've been. I need to have success in what I'm doing. I need to have good opinions of others. I need to live up to the names that I've given myself. I need to have my health, my appearance. And I need to be able to control other people's lives, like my children, or my friends, or my loved ones. Those are attachments. And when things go wrong, when I don't have what I'm looking for, and I get nervous or frightened or angry or whatever, that's when I learn something about me. Because those things define myself. If somebody is ugly to me and I get angry in return, then I learn something about how sensitive I am. About how I want somebody else to be the way I want them to be. I learn something about me. All of my attitudes, all of my angers and feelings and stuff never reveal anything about the other person. They only reveal things about myself, about the way I would like things to be. That takes a little chewing on to get to. I know a lady who raised her children to have a deep respect for where other people are coming from. And she wrote one time that she had this wonderful conversation with her daughter who was 20-some years old and at the university. She came home, this daughter, and said, you know, I just can't disagree anymore with anybody. We got these crazy people on the campus, but when I ask them why they say the things they do and why they want to do the things they do, and I listen to their explanations of where they're coming from, I say, of course that's why you think the way you do. If I were had gone through what you went through, I would feel exactly the same way. There wasn't a need to be right and blame somebody for being different or having opposing ideas. Say, I can understand you. One of the sincerest forms of love is the desire to understand where somebody's coming from instead of trying to control them. When was the last time somebody tried to understand you? Asked you questions about why you think the way you do or feel the way you do? We don't do it very often because we're into controlling. We're into wanting things to be the way we want them to be. That whole business of Jesus saying, if you have any possessions, you can't be my disciple. He's saying, if you're attached to anything, then you won't be able to hear me. It'll never reach you. Unless you let go of all of this need, then you'll never be free and you'll never be able to freely respond. Your mind's going to be somewhere else. Read again the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew's Gospel. Read the Sermon on the Mount. I'm not going to read it from here. But you know, Jesus is saying, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. It means whatever you think about expands. If your treasure is somebody hurt you, and by golly, you're going to live that victim role for a long time. I've been victimized. Why should anybody treat me that way? I deserve better than... And you ever go through those little conversations in your head? And you run through what you're going to say to them the next time you see them? And I don't deserve this. I deserve better than that. Then you go on and on. Whatever you think about expands. And you get trapped and you lose your peace. You lose your ability to respond in love. You're not free. Jesus had something terribly important to take in, but you got to take it all the way in and struggle with it every time you're hurt, angry, upset, anxious, or whatever, or fearful. Where is that coming from? Why am I looking at things that way? I started this, 40 years ago, at least. I had a superior at a seminary. Well, he told us we came there to die to ourselves. We wore black clothes. This was a very large place. There were 100 rooms just for seminarians, plus the faculty rooms, all that kind of stuff. And on every window were Venetian blinds. And this guy had a thing about Venetian blinds. He wanted them turned a certain way and raised a certain height from the bottom, And he'd walk along the corridors constantly adjusting Venetian blinds. And every time we had a meeting of all the kids and he was supposed to give us directions about something, and he'd always say something about the Venetian blinds. The guy was sitting next to me one night and he says, one word about Venetian blinds tonight, I'm going to kill him. And I thought, why is he so upset about somebody else's problem? Why is he so upset about somebody else's problem? I don't have to take on his problem. I don't have to lose my peace because he's got a problem. And I began to look every time I got annoyed at somebody or something. Why am I annoyed? And I realized it was almost always because I wasn't getting my way. People weren't living the world the way I wanted it to be lived. I wanted to be in control. It's very revealing. And you let go of the need to control anybody else, and you see the wonderful diversion and differences and diversity of the world and different people coming from different places. You discover everybody's on his or her own path. Everybody's on their own unique path. It's none of your business what their path is. It's It's none of your business. They're going to have to follow their light and their direction and make their decisions to live their own way, including your spouse, your loved one, your friend, your children, your pastor, the Pope, whatever. You got to let people be where they are, as you have to be on your own path, following your own bliss. I love that. Follow your own bliss. Don't live up to somebody else's expectations of you. You're not free then. You're living somebody else's life, not the life the Lord made you to live. He made you a unique, wonderful creation, and He wants you to fulfill it. Did you ever see on video the teacher from California, Louis Biscaglia? He talks about love. He's got this course on love out at UCLA. He's a little Italian guy, and he sweats a lot, so he has a handkerchief out all the time. And does he speak with energy. He is just a delight to watch. I mean, you could talk for hours. One night he says, you got to know that you're unique and you're beautiful and you're lovely and you're wonderful, and you got to be you. If God made you to be a plum, don't want to be an orange. You'll make a lousy orange, but you'll make a wonderful plum. Then he said this thing is, you ladies, you have fat thighs. And you really wish you had thin thighs. And he says, and all your life you're going to feel uncomfortable and terrible about yourself because you got fat thighs. He says, love your fat thighs. There's some guy somewhere in the world looking for a woman with fat thighs. Live your bliss and let everybody else live their bliss. You're on your path. Stuff that you can see now you couldn't see 5 years ago. Why should you expect somebody else to be in the place where you are on your path? Maybe it's going to take them 10 more years before the place they're going to be able to see what you see. Somebody said once, we'd all like to be kings and queens and rule our world. And how can you be a king or a queen without subjects? And so what we want to do is make everybody subject to our way of seeing the world. And in the process, we get terribly frustrated because as soon as we want somebody else to be that way, their back stiffens and says, you're not going to tell me what to do. It's like those who try to sell Jesus to other people. We found something wonderful and the Spirit is alive. Hey, you've got to come to a prayer meeting. You've got to come to know Jesus. You really? Doesn't work that way. People don't like to be pushed. They like to see somebody who's free enough who will care about them. In the Cursillo, they have a motto, make a friend, be a friend, then introduce a friend to Christ. It takes a long time to be a friend, where you really care about the other. You don't want them to change. You don't even want them to find Christ. You let go of all your desires for them. And you just be you. And at some point they're going to say, how come you're so happy? Then something will happen inside of them. They reach that point in their path where they want to do it. And you're not pushing them so you get notches in your Bible. Got 3 converts this week. But so much of that is a power struggle. It's power. And people sense the power. I want to make you over into something I can approve of. Really? And we find it in prayer groups. People telling other people how to behave. Don't you think you ought to? We make up all kinds of things. And in the process, we forget to just live. We heard the word this morning, be children. To live like children. Where are you going? Out. They come back, what'd you do? Nothing. They play. No, they're not going to get anything out of it. They're just playing. Full of wonder. Watch a little 3-year-old out in the backyard, finds a worm. Wonderful. Wonderful. People are wonderful. They're amazing. Even if they're different. Especially if they're different. But if we're threatened by the differences, we're not free. And we can no longer enjoy the beauty. Right? To be able to let go of control. Control is such a big thing. Jesus says you can't serve two masters. You'll hate one and love the other, but you can't have two. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart's going to be. Is your treasure God and His will, or is it your way of looking at God, your way of serving, and your way of being a Christian, your way of being human? You own your ideas. You have to be right. You have to control somebody else and their path and the timing of their path. There's a lot of heavy stuff in here because we're all afflicted by it. Every one of us is afflicted by it. And it's when we get down to those nitty-gritty dimensions of our lives that we're really living the Word and not just hearing about it. But you got to reflect and you got to look at yourself and say, but here's one of the best questions I ever heard for starting a conference. Are you fun to live with? If not, why not? It's the controlling thing, letting go of that, and just getting into touch with life. Lord says, trust in providence. Trust. Trust that God will be with you. God will provide whatever you need when you need it. But you got to be convinced in your heart that right now you have everything you need to be happy. And if you can't be happy right now with where you are and what you have, you never will be happy. Because your attitude is one of scarcity. Your attitude is of emptiness that needs to be filled. And even if you get more, the attitude's still there and you're going to want more. And you got to let go and say, hey, thank you, Lord. And you get into always and everywhere thanking Him, you realize you're already overwhelmingly provided for. In friends, in things, in money, in security. You let go of all that. I'm in God's hands. I don't have to worry about any of this stuff. I don't have to worry about anything. Bad stuff happens to us. Bad stuff happens. And I'll tell you a secret, and it's proved 100% correct for me. When bad stuff happens to me, it keeps happening until I've learned the lesson. And once I've learned the lesson, it doesn't happen to me anymore. Lord's drawing us on. And some bad stuff will happen. And we'll get frustrated, we'll get angry, we'll get frightened, we'll get whatever. And I say, in everything that happens, there's a lesson. When I've learned the lesson, it doesn't have to happen anymore. But in our hearts, we know we have abundance. The Lord's going to provide. I don't need more to be happy. But when the time comes for things in my life to change, whatever I need is going to be there. That's what it means to say, the Lord is my provider. I can trust in providence. Carl Jung coined a word that is used a lot these days in all kinds of different ways. And again, it's something which is common to all of our experience. He uses the word synchronicity. That the world and the universe is bigger than all of us, and God's in charge of it all, and He's making all kinds of things happen. St. Paul alludes to it when he says, everything works unto good for those who love the Lord. Everything. Stuff that seems to be bad really can turn out to be good if you love the Lord. If you try to find a lesson in it. If you're growing through it. If you're paying attention to it. And the Lord's in control of it all. Some people call it coincidences. Coincidences. Dr. Bernie Siegel has written some marvelous books on love, medicine, and miracles. And he says, he has this thing that, God's going to give us everything we need when we need it, at the right time. Things are going to happen. And it may seem like a coincidence to people, but the more you notice the coincidences, the more you realize there's something else going on here. You're not really in control of the universe anyhow. God is, and He's going to find a way to provide for you. Did you ever have the feeling that or start thinking about somebody and all of a sudden the phone rings and that's who it is? And you know that that's the person? Or did you ever get somebody on your mind and say, well, I think I'll call them, or write them, and you call them and they say, gee, I needed to hear from you. Or I knew you were going to call. Bernie Siegel tells the story of a secretary who didn't believe any of this silly stuff. And one day she left home, she went out to get in the car wouldn't start. So she went back in the house to call an emergency service, and the phone rang. And it was her brother. Her brother had been a drug addict in New York, and he got off the drugs and went up to Maine, where he was away from that scene. but he had this terrible urge to go back. And he called his sister to say, I'm really in trouble. I need to talk to you until I can talk this out of me. So she stayed on the phone with him for an hour. And he finally was okay, and he settled down. How come she went back in the house? How come the car didn't start? Well, then she goes back out to her car, and just then her other brother drives up. And she says, what'd you come over here for? You know I'm at work during the day. He says, I know, but I was driving along the freeway, and just something said, go over to your sister's house. What's the matter? She said, I can't get my car started. So he started the car for her, and she came to work. She says, I believe. Bernie tells a story of a woman who was down and out. I think she was divorced, and she felt like she was going to be lonely for the rest of her life, and everything was bad and all like that. And he was telling her, trust. Just start believing in abundance. Start believing that God's going to take care of you if you get in the flow of His life. If you stop trying to control your life, you follow your bliss. What did God make you to do? What desires are in your heart? They come from Him. A couple months later, several months later, he meets her, and she's beaming from ear to ear. He says, tell me what happened. She says, well, I always wanted to fly a plane. So this one Sunday afternoon, I went out to take my first lesson, and this gorgeous hunk of a guy gets off another plane. And we met. We're going to get married. He said, how come you went Sunday instead of Saturday? How come he went that day? How come you both wanted to fly airplanes? How did this happen? Do you know what I mean? No, this stuff is always going on, and if we take the time to notice, there aren't any coincidences. The Lord is arranging life, and if we get in the stream of it, if we flow with it, that's obedience. That's what obedience means. Don't push the river. Don't try to control it. Hey, Lord, what are you doing? Get with it. And it's like paddling downstream, and all you need is provided for you. Do you believe that? Letting go of the control is the hard thing. Trusting that when you're in the Lord's hands and you're flowing with what He's doing with life, whatever you need is going to come. It's a wonderful place to be. It's very free. It's free of fear. It's free of anxiety. It's free of a lot of pain. You know, every great spiritual guru of whatever culture has said the kinds of things that Jesus said. If you have any possessions, you're never going to find it. Let go of the need to possess. Every guru in every great religion and spirituality, including Jesus, has said that the Lord will provide. The Lord will provide. Another thing that is kind of important comes from a story that is again found in many cultures. And one version of it goes like this. There was a farmer in China, a very poor farmer in a little town, a little village of farmers, and he had an old beat-up horse. And one day the horse ran away. And he used the horse to, draw a plow and that kind of stuff. And all the villagers said, oh, bad luck, bad luck. He said, good luck, bad luck, who knows? The following week, that beat-up old horse comes in out of the hills with a whole herd of wild horses coming with him. And they all came into the corral. And all the villagers said, oh, good luck, good luck. He says, good luck, bad luck, who knows? Next week, his son is out trying to tame one of the wild horses, and he falls off and breaks his leg. And all the villagers say, oh, bad luck, bad luck. And the farmer says, good luck, bad luck, who knows? The following week, the army comes through the village and picks up all the able young men and takes them off to the war. And the farmer's son can't go because he's got a broken leg. And all the villagers say, good luck, good luck. And of course, one point of the story is we never know. Something that seems to be bad can turn out to be the best thing in the world for us. One of the things that Bernie Siegel has discovered in all of his working with sick people is how many people who've gotten cancer say it's the best thing that ever happened to them. A lot of people with AIDS are saying it's the best thing that ever happened to them. It made them wake up. It made them discover living instead of dying. It made them face reality. And all of a sudden they decided they're going to live every day that they have. And everything's turned around. I've got people who've been divorced say, best thing that ever happened to me. I was so dependent. I was so wrapped up in serving and all this other kind of junk, and I never knew what it was to accept responsibility for myself. A lot of stuff that looks bad can be the best thing that can happen to us. Doesn't mean it's not painful when it happens, but when we discover the lesson, now the Lord is leading. All kinds of things work together to lead us into a new thing. But there's another side to that, which is probably even more important. Good luck, bad luck, who knows? Whatever you do in terms of loving someone else, how do you know it's the right thing? You may be, very accepting and generous and giving. It could be the worst thing that ever happened to them, right? You could be very firm and strong. That could be the worst thing that ever happened to them. How do you know? You don't know. We never know the effects of the way in which we help or hurt others. And if we hurt them, maybe that's the best thing that could happen to them. So let go and relax. Do what seems right and don't worry about the outcomes. Does that make sense? You do what you can, and if it seems to turn out bad, maybe that turning out bad will later turn out to be right. You don't know. So relax. That's another way of being free. I don't have to worry about the outcomes. It'll take care of itself, and God will take care of whoever I can only do what seems right at the time, and then relax with it. Hee. Now let's come to another bugaboo. I know so many good Christians, charismatics, priests, bishops, prophets, kings, who have listened to the word of the Lord, who pray every day, who try so. Oh, that's another thing. Let me, before I get into this. All the things we lay on ourselves that come from outside, they're like Anthony DeMello says, it's like the guy pointing at the moon. Don't look at the finger, look at the moon. If somebody says it's a good idea to pray every day, that doesn't mean you have to pray every day. That's somebody else's rule. The rules are only there to help you into a relationship with God. That's what's important. I talked to a lady last week. She says, every morning before she's a school teacher, every morning I get up a half an hour early so I can sit down and meditate for a half an hour. I gave it up this year. It was just another pressure, and it was ruining me. So now I feel so much more at peace. I don't have that pressure of this thing. I get it in when I feel I need it, and I feel much better. She get out from underneath the tyranny of somebody else's agenda. And no matter what anybody says to you about, or you read about how to grow in the Lord in your spiritual life, decide what's good for you. Decide and work it out. And you see, by trial and error, you'll find out what works. And sometimes what worked today is not going to work next year. Or what's working now, you never even would have tried 5 years ago. So you're in different places. And you know what I mean? Don't look at the finger. Look at the moon. It's like all the structures of the church and all the structures of worship. You can do it any way you want. We make them all up. None of them are holy. The church is not holy. Its rules and laws are not holy. Its directives are not holy. They only point to the holy. If they don't lead us into the presence of God, then they're not holy at all. If they're boring, they're not holy. Well, we don't get holy by following all the rules. The rules and structures are only there so that somehow or other, maybe they'll get us into the place where we can meet God. That's what they're there for. And if they're not working, we've got to change them. Okay, now on to this other business. As I said, I've met all kinds of people of all kinds of levels of spirituality and jobs in the church and in spiritual programs who have the same problem. They still carry around a lot of anger. They still carry unforgiveness. And they still do a lot of judging of others. And Jesus was so explicit. Read again the Sermon on the Mount. Do not judge that you may not be judged. If you forgive others their failings, your heavenly Father will forgive you yours. But if you do not forgive others, your Father will not forgive your failings either. There's a basic misconception here. I really have come to believe that there's no need to forgive anybody anything. Other people are only doing what they know how to do when they do what they do, even if it hurts me. Ask a terrorist why he blew up a bus with 35 school children on it. Somebody's got to make a statement. They're so captivated by their vision of the world, of all the influences they have had up to that moment in their path, in their life, that for them this is the only right thing to do. Sure, some people got hurt. There's a lot of millions of other people who need to hear a message so that more kids won't be hurt. You see what I'm saying? When people hurt you, they think they're doing the right thing. If you hurt yourself, it's your own problem. Sometimes people are ugly to you. Sometimes people are unfair or unjust. They're only doing what they know how to do. You see somebody doing something. I was listening to some ladies talking the other day, and they were going on about this other lady. And I thought, whenever you judge anybody else, you're not defining them because you're not in their shoes. You're defining yourself. You're defining what you think is right and what is right for them without even knowing where they are on their path or how they got there. Every judgment is defining yourself, not anybody else. When you come to terms with that, again you discover that when somebody annoys you, says something or does something that hurts you, look at the pain. Look at the anger. Look at why you want to blame somebody else when it's really going on inside of you. It's your feelings of hurt. It's your feelings of anger. They define you. They define the way you're looking at the world and the way you're looking at others. And what you want it to be, but it's not. So it's only defining yourself. You follow me? So you can learn an awful lot from the people who hurt you. Thank God for them. They're one of your greatest gifts. They're teaching you about yourself and where you're coming from and how you're looking at life. Forgive one another. Let go of the junk. A lot of times it's easier to blame. Our culture is filled with blame. American culture, USA culture. Sue anybody you can. You know, if you fall down on the street because you weren't watching where you're going, who owns the house? Sue them. Their sidewalk is bad. You know. Well, we grow up learning how to blame other people. Why don't we blame the Arabs for the oil shortage? Why don't we blame ourselves for not getting rid of cars that burn oil? Somebody said an F-11 jet uses about 580 gallons of jet fuel in 15 minutes. That's the equivalent of what most people use in gasoline in a year. But they take the training flights up at our air bases with the Air National Guard to burn millions of gallons at the end of the month or the end of the year so they can get the same amount allocated next year. And then they say we have an oil shortage. We don't look at ourselves. We want to blame somebody else. We don't want to accept responsibility for our attitudes, our feelings, our own happiness. And we come to maturity when we accept responsibility. If I'm angry at some of the things going on in our church, and I ought to be, and you ought to be, then I got to accept responsibility for the fact that I would like it to be different. And the liking and disliking and desire and the vision and the image is all in me. It's the way I look at it. God bless you. And at some point, I've had to come to the realization that the church, the world, and all that's going on and all the turmoil of the past 25 years is just where it's supposed to be in the history of the world and the universe. And we're going through a very difficult transition time, and just because I'd like it to be finished isn't going to finish it. And my problem is I haven't accepted the real world. DeMillo says, the world, if you understand it, the world will be just what it is. And if you don't understand it, it will still be just what it is. You get in touch with reality instead of the I wish it were. That's not reality. That's illusion. I wish this other person would be, but they're not. I wish I wouldn't lose my temper so much. I wish I didn't have so many sexual thoughts. I wish that, hey, I am what I am. And the Lord doesn't ask me to change, He asks me to love myself. Just the way I am. He asks me to love you just the way you are. He asks you to love yourself just the way you are. Not even putting any pressure on yourself to change. See, all of this changes as you begin to see what's going on. You lose your attachment and your need for money or things or people to be different when you can label them attachments. Bondage, one of the chains, one of the links in the chains that keep you in bondage. It's like, one time I found an old book, a very old book. I thought, boy, this is worth a lot of money. And I went to a book dealer. He said, junk. When I thought it was worth a lot of money, I was careful of it. You know, when I found out it was junk, I threw it away. When you find out your attitudes are dumb, they're not so appealing anymore as attitudes. Well, Jesus says, take on my yoke. My burden is light, my yoke is easy. All you got to do is see things in a different way. You don't have to control other people in the world and life. You're not the Savior. You don't have to change the times. We're going through a time, and it's part of what the history of the world is about. And you got to flow with the river and stop wishing it were something else. Get in touch with what's real. It's going to be what it is anyhow, whether you do or not. And flow with it. And you're free. You're free from lots of frustration. Free from a lot of self-inflicted pain. Which brings us to the cross. Jesus said, unless you pick up your cross every day, you can't be my disciple. What's the cross of Jesus? The cross of Jesus, it reminds me of a parish retreat once, where they used to have the missionaries come in, for 2 weeks. And they preached to the men 1 week and the women 1 week. Any old enough to know that kind of thing? And they always had a whole bunch of religious articles in the back for sale, and at the end of the night they would say, all right, we'll bless all your articles. Hold up your miraculous medals, and they say the blessings for that. Hold up your rose, you say the blessings for that. Hold up your crosses, and one woman held up her husband. St. Philip Neri said, as Jesus does, we are mostly the carpenters of our own crosses. We create our problems because of the way we look at things and people and our desire to control and to own things and people and circumstances. Because we live with illusions. That's not the cross that Jesus asks us to carry. Not the ones we make for ourselves. Think of Gandhi and how in Africa, where he started, is turning into someone who cared about the poor and about justice. Who got all beat up and thrown in jail and all that other kind of stuff. Or his followers. You ever see the movie Gandhi? Give yourself a treat. Look at it. It was one point, I think it was a salt factory, where a whole bunch of men lined up because they were not allowed in there. Gandhi had said to the people, this salt is our salt. It's not the British salt. And it's time for us to take it again. And he went down to the beach and he took some. In direct violation of the law, because the British wouldn't allow them to have any. And these men lined up at this factory. There was a fence around it. And the army came to stand in front of them. And there were hundreds of them, the men. And the women were there too. The first guy came up, and the army, as he approached the line, one of the soldiers hit him in the head with the butt of a rifle. The guy just fell over. The second guy presented himself. And another soldier hit him in the head, went down. The women came and started taking him away and ministering to them. And this went on for hours. One man after another. No violence from them. turn the other cheek, present yourself. It came to the point where the soldiers, the British soldiers, became so disgusted with themselves because their violence, their injustice was so clearly presented over and over that the soldiers were cringing at what they did, and the whole world saw the violence for what it was. It was one of those. That's the suffering. That's the cross that Jesus is asking us to bear. A Martin Luther King, who knew he was going to be killed, but stood up and said, "We're all equal, brothers and sisters. We're all equal." Standing up for justice. I know guys who lost their jobs because they were interested in justice within the company. I know guys who lost business because they wanted to speak the truth and they wouldn't engage in bribes. These are the kinds of things that are the cross that Jesus is talking about, not the ones we make up for ourselves when we're blaming others for our problems, when we're judging others, when we play the victim role. That's my favorite role. When somebody hurts me, I go back to being that little boy in school who says, you'll be sorry when you find out how much you hurt me. That little boy is still alive in me, and that victim role is still, I guess I'll never get rid of it. But now I can identify it and get beyond it and say, that's not at all what's going on here. I don't need to judge anybody else, and I don't need to blame anybody else. I don't need to condemn anybody else. I can let them be on their path, and I don't have to respond to it. I can recognize they're having a problem right now and not make it my problem. It's like they teach you in Al-Anon, and other people are involved in a family where there's somebody with a severe problem. So don't let your life be ruled by their problem. Don't be a co-addict. Don't run your life around somebody else's problem. Be responsible for your life. Do with it what God has given you to do with it. Don't be living somebody else's life or somebody else's problem. There's a lot of stuff we covered this morning about getting free. And what it means is struggling with the Word. I've only taken a couple sayings of Jesus. Love one another, don't judge, forgive, and don't have any possessions. We've worked on it for a couple of hours. It's taken me years of struggle to boil it down to that. And I haven't said nearly half of what I'd like to say. But it's stuff that you can take and work with. When you discover day after day what annoys you, what do you want to blame somebody else for? What makes you unhappy, or what causes you to lose your peace? You're going to grow so much in the path the Lord is leading you in, which is nobody else's path in the world. And you're going to find yourself, you can get free of the need to carry all these burdens and angers and fears around with you. When you let go of the junk, then you're open to the Lord and His love. And you can accept His love. We're going to talk about that this afternoon, loving and being loved. Now, before we close, how about some reactions or questions? Yes.
You say it took you years and years and years to learn that. How old are you?
How old am I? Man wants to know if it took me years and years and years. How old? I am 59. Going on 30. Yes, ma'am. What if you don't have years and years and years?
You're struggling trying to find God.
If you don't have years and years and years, you got today, and that's all you need. I love to remind people in my parish about the shortness of life, and what a wonderful vision that gives us of the importance of today. The first one I ever heard do this was Dr. Elizabeth Keebler-Ross. She was addressing a group of people today, and she was talking about one of the things that dying people need to do is get rid of their unfinished business. They really need to work through saying farewell to their loved ones, of forgiving or whatever else they need to do before they die. And she said, how about you? You got any unfinished business? If you knew you were going to die on the way home from here, would you like to make a phone call or two before you leave? Oh boy, that's pretty poignant, isn't it? Father Lou Barrowby told me that he was at one of these workshops and somebody asked him that, do you have any unfinished business? Would you like to make a phone call? I said, ruin my day. I said, I can start thinking through things, but my God, when I like to say this and I like to do that, and just do it. Get it over with. We got enough time to say yes now. It's a limited yes. It's the best we can do right now, but we can do it. And that's all we ever do. We say, I totally yes now. Seek first the reign of God. This is what God wants me to do. I'm going to do it right now, the best I can. And tomorrow will take care of itself. But you know, if we only had a week to live, what would you want to do with it? Sometimes I live alone. At least as far as I'm telling anybody. I live alone. And so I cook my own meals. And sometimes I come, it's dinner time, and I come downstairs, and I look around, and I say, well, maybe I'll just have a piece of bread and peanut butter. And then I say to myself, if this were the last week of my life, would I be satisfied with a peanut butter sandwich? Why not make myself a beautiful meal? And
Like I said, a lot of people still do not know how to leave the past go.
yes, a lot of people don't know how to let the past go. There's only one way. Change your attitude about what really needs forgiveness. Nobody ever needs forgiveness. Forgiveness is sometimes a power play. Forgiveness of other people is often something which can destroy a relationship. I forgive you, really. You never try to understand me. You're still blaming me, that's why you forgive me. You're still judging me, that's why you forgive me. You won't give me the benefit of the doubt that what I did was in goodwill. Once you begin to look at people from the point of view, they're on their own path. They've come to the place where they have done what they know how to do. Then you can't blame them anymore. You can't blame yourself for doing what you do because you're on the path where you are right now. You come to the point eventually where you never blame or judge anybody. Have I met Dr. Siegel personally? No, I haven't.
I'm reading the book right now. I gather that he had to do a lot of learning himself.
Dr. Bernie Siegel, Love, Medicine, and Miracles. Marvelous, marvelous book. I've read it 10 times. And I go back to it and snatch out passages here and there because he's the same way as your question. He said, we haven't got time to do a lot of psychoanalysis. We haven't got a lot of time to go back and spend a lot of time trying to heal memories. The people that I'm dealing with, especially with so-called terminal illnesses, so we won't use the word anymore because so many people are healed when they straighten out their lives and get rid of the junk and the unforgiveness and all like that. He says, they haven't got time to do that. We only got time to address the right now. So let's do the forgiving if that's the beginning step in letting go. And let's begin to live our bliss now. Yes?
I often have wondered what is really a call from the Lord in terms of when we are in a situation and we find ourselves in a situation where there is division and there is a lack of love in it.
What is our role when we find ourselves in a situation of division? It's practically impossible to answer a question like that because it's abstract. You know, but the basic abstract answer is, don't worry about it. You know, you love people. You don't judge them. You don't try to change them. You let them be where they are. Let them work out the problems. And if you feel the need to intervene, you got to ask yourself, why? Am I trying to control it? Does this thing need to work? Sometimes it needs to work its way out. It might take a couple of years for it to work its way out. Things might have to hit bottom before they come up. We don't have the wisdom to understand that. All we have to do is love people. All we have to do is be there for them. You know, I was very involved in Chicago in the 60s during the civil rights problems. And everybody was arguing open housing and prejudices and all this other kind of stuff. And I get into all of these big mouth fights and arguments for hours at a time. And everybody go away completely convinced that they were right on both sides. Nobody ever got changed. And a young doctor who was at Heinz Medical Center was telling me that he often had discussions in the hospital with other workers in the hospital, doctors, nurses, and things. And he'd say, you know what I found? He says, when somebody tells me that they can't trust black people and them moving in the neighborhood, and they go on with all of these expressions of prejudice, he says, I say, how come? Where are you coming from? Why do you feel that way? What experiences have you had? Who told you these things? Well, I try to understand them, and I don't try to change their minds. And they tell me, because nobody ever tried to listen to them before and find out where they were coming from. So after all, I say, you don't agree with us, do you? Where are you coming from? You see the difference? The one was the arguing and trying to coerce somebody into your way of looking at things. The other was to take away all the coercion. There's nothing to fight against. To show real interest, real understanding, not because you're faking it, not because it's a strategy, but because it's a way of loving. Where are you coming from? With a sincere interest, the person realizes you're not trying to change them. And they might even be interested in where you're coming from. They may not either. But you don't worry about it because you don't have to control it. Jesus says, love one another. He doesn't say change anybody. Love each other. And we're going to talk more about that this afternoon. One more.
See, when you're in the process of changing, and you see all the other people around you are different, and you're afraid, what should you leave behind and take yourself?
When you see people around you changing and you're afraid to change, what should you leave behind and take for yourself? Or what should you take for yourself? It's like that guy stepping out on the magic carpet. See, the thing about love is the decision or the content of a decision to love is totally empty. It's like a man and a woman fall in love and they say, "Will you spend the rest of your life with me?" They don't have no idea what that is. There's no content to the decision. You know, you're not deciding for something specific. You're deciding for, we don't know where we're going. We don't even know what this means. And we're insane enough to say, let's try it. You don't know what it means to turn yourself over to God. You have no idea to say, Lord, I just want to look for what you want. I want to follow the wisdom of Jesus for a living. It's going to set me free. And I just trust that it's a good thing.
How do you know it's him talking to you and not yourself?
We're going to talk about that on Sunday morning, the sermon. How do you know it's him talking to you and you're not talking to yourself? That's a very, very, very good question. And we'll get to it. God bless you, everybody, and have a nice afternoon, and we'll catch you later.